Rose. I am your host, Ken Joslin. Man, I've got a super surprise for you. I have got an amazing guest who went viral, not because of his leadership ability or anything he's done. He's a phenomenal speaker. Keynote speaker, has been in 106 countries. His real estate teams have sold over 5,000 homes. He's a best-selling author. He's an investor in a gazillion companies, but my boy sank a houseboat on YouTube. My man, Jimmy Rex. What's up, big boy?
What's up, man? Dude, I think it's the first time I've been introduced like that. The point of it is look, the houseboat was already sinking. I just told my buddies to start filming. And, next thing we knew, we put a little Titanic music behind it and went viral. I had over 150 million views on that thing. So,
dude, I'll never forget when first time I met you. We really got to spend some time together. We're both in Irwin's mastermind, and we're in Hollywood out on the back deck, and you're telling me the story, and I didn't know it. I was absolutely that. What in the world made you think of, okay, the houseboat's sinking, not save the houseboat? Hey guys, we need to get the video in this thing.
Well, I was just like, I grew up with the truth is I grew up with a dad he was amazing in so many ways, but that 5%, he was pretty explosive. And when things went wrong, he really became a not very likable person to be around, as to put it nicely. And so, I've just always had this theory: when things go wrong, or when there's like those situations where my dad would have lost it, I try to just remain calm and try to be cool with it. And so one of the reasons why everyone loved the videos, because I'm kind of laughing and telling jokes. I mean, it was pretty scary, if I'm being honest. It was pretty touch and go. It's literally just taking on water. We got the Coast Guard trying to get us off, but I'm just laughing. And I turned to my buddies and made a couple jokes, and because I didn't want to cause that. I mean, again, it's like, that's what my dad would always do. He'd ruin so many family vacations and things because he'd get so upset or he'd lose it. And so I've just trained myself to remain calm in all situations. And I think it's a real skill that a lot of people lose, is when everything's going haywire around you, like really zone it in and go, like, what's the reality here? And how do I make this situation, the best we can?
Dude, I love that. Walk me through like that process. Cause I've got some really good therapists. I've done a lot of trauma work from being a kid and being, 12 schools in 12 years, shipped back and forth to my dad's from Atlanta to Detroit 6 different times. A mom who would, throw a humidifier at you, chase you around the house with all that kind of exactly what you're talking about. Talk to me about how did you overcome that? Because normally what happens is you just repeat the pattern.
Yeah, well, I think everybody serves a couple of things. Like, one, people either be example or of what to do or what not to do, right? And and again, I had a happy childhood. For the most part, it worked. But I remember just even as a little kid, just going, okay, I'm going to do that different. I'm going to do that different. So I was always looking for stuff. Like, I'll give you an example. One time, my buddy, I was brand new. We just moved to this new area, and I was hanging out with this buddy for one of the first times, and his dad had this brand new BMW. I think I was 11 or 12. And I had a Pepsi in my hand. It's probably the last time I had a Pepsi, but, and I'm getting in his car, and he turns to me, this guy, he was super wealthy, but just a very arrogant kind of guy. And he says, hey, if you spill that Pepsi in my car, I'll kill you. I mean, this is the first time I've met the guy. This is barely the first time I met his son. And I just kind of chuckle uncomfortably, and he goes, no, I'm serious. And I remember just thinking to myself, okay, like, if I ever have money when I'm older, I'm never going to put things ahead of people. And I just made a mental note, right? And then I was always just going about doing my thing. And I was always just making these little mental notes. And then I had, mentors would tell me little things. Like, I'll give you one example. I had a partner when I first started my first business. We were selling steak and chicken door to door. And we had these big vehicles that we wrapped, and we had like cows hanging their arms out the windows. It looked like, it was really cool. It's called Nebraska Meat Network. It's just this fun little meat business we did. Well, the van that we used to ship the people out and everything, to go sell that day, the back door didn't lock. And I knew this. And so I was just randomly driving with my friend one night. It was like 10 at night. It was the grocery store, and I see the van. I said, hey, this will be funny. Let's sneak in the back of the van, and then we'll scare him when he starts driving, like nothing more horrifying than somebody in the back of your vehicle. But I just thought it'd be a funny prank on my business partner. And so we get in the back of the car. My buddy's like 6'2", 270. He's a college baseball player, big dude. And my business partner starts driving off, and, he, all of a sudden, I just kind of, in the back of the van, so that he looks and he sees I'm down so he can't see me. And my buddy's just sitting there like 4 rows back in the van. And my business partner just looks at him, and he's just staring. and he didn't do anything. He's just staring. And finally I pop up. It's uncomfortable for us. I'm like, what is going on? And I'm like, Herman, it's me, it's Jimmy. And he's like, oh, okay. I'm like, how are you not scared by this? What is wrong with you? Are you crazy? And he goes, Jimmy, when something goes wrong, everybody freaks out. He's like, you have to stop and focus. What can I do? How do I get out of this? He's like, you have a moment in between, like the original response, what happened, and what you react. He goes, and that is everything. You've got to really focus in that moment. I'm like, I just got the greatest lesson I didn't intend on getting. I've never forgot that. He was just like a ninja in that moment, you know? And so I think just learning from other people, seeing, but to your point of like the childhood trauma and everything, like this will still happen to me all the time. We have triggers. Everybody has triggers. We have things that are just going to upset us. And I think recognizing that trigger, just being able to recognize it, you go, okay, this isn't me. I'm reacting to, like, this is my inner child, or this is like my insecurities or whatever else. And all of a sudden you just get out of that fight or flight mode, you know, you breathe a little bit, and you can, you know, people say like I was out of his mind or whatever. It's because you literally are in the wrong part of your mind. You're in the wrong part of your brain. But if you can just breathe through that a second, just recognize, okay, this is what's going on. I'm in fight or flight. You're safe, like you're calm. What's reality? And then you get to make a better choice. Now I say that like it's easy to do, but you know, I'm sure most of the time I still, you know, on some level screw that up. I will give you one other example real quick. I was recently down in Lake Powell, and I take my men's group down there, 50 of us, this houseboat trip. And there's this one beach up the canyon. It's the best beach in the whole place. And so we always park there. So we had 2 houseboats. So we parked the one, and then there's like 5 other houseboats on this beach. And one of them's about 150 feet away. It's a really nice houseboat. Well, sometimes these storms will kick in down there, Ken, and they are gnarly. We're talking like biblical, right? And I mean, the rain is blowing sideways. And so I've got 40 dudes on the anchor lines. They started coming out, and like, we're trying to hold on to the boat, and I'm in the boat trying to gas it to keep it on the shore. And this guy comes running over from one of the other boats, a big jack dude, and he's yelling, he's swearing at everybody, because if our boat comes unhooked, it's going to go flying into his 100 feet down the beach, right? So that's why he's so mad. So he starts digging this hole, and he's this big old dude, jacked. And after we kind of saved the boat and everything, and he helped a lot for sure. And, you know, I get out there, and by the way, this is a men's group. I teach men how to have healthy masculinity. And so like he gets out, and this dude, he just starts F-bombing us for days. And he's like, who's in charge of this group? And they're like, well, Jimmy is. And so I go over there, and he's like, you guys call yourself men? You don't even know how to anchor a boat. You're going to teach men how to be masculine, and you don't even know how to be just going off. And any other version of me, any other era of my life, I would have totally just gone off on this guy. I lost it, told him pound sand, right? But I knew, because I've done the work, Ken, that's why I want to tell this part of the story, that all those attacks had nothing to do with me. A couple of years ago, I would have taken it personally, because I was still insecure about my own masculinity, my own manhood. Like, am I competent? Should I be even doing this? And ultimately he started yelling, and I just said, hey, sir, very calmly. I said, hey, first off, I want to say thank you, because I watched how hard you dug holes to help us keep our boat on the beach, and it wasn't lost on me. Secondly, I've been on this beach with some of the most masculine men on the earth, and our boat flipped on its side. Like, I don't think it has anything to do with our ability to, you know, dig a hole, whether or not we're masculine, but thank you for your help. And just totally diffusing me. I had nowhere to go. And my heart rate truly didn't go up 1%. Now, keep in mind, I got 50 guys in their 20s that I'm coaching on how to be the best version of themselves. They just saw firsthand toxic versus healthy masculinity, right? And the guy didn't know what to do. He just walked off, kind of stormed off. And all my guys were like, dude, how did you stay so calm? And I was like, because it wasn't about me. I don't care what that guy says. I didn't want to ruin our day or whatever. He comes back an hour later, Ken, and he's pretty emotional. And he says, hey, man, I'm so sorry. He's like, I've been working on myself for all these years. I actually teach breath work. I teach yoga, and I freaking lost it on you guys, the exact opposite of what I should have done. Meanwhile, you're over here trying to improve your lives and work on each other. And he's like, I just want to say thank you. And it was so cool. And instead of having this total fight, this guy apologizes. And then the next day he comes back over again, Ken, and he's really emotional. He goes, hey, I actually looked up your group last night. I see what you're doing for men, how you're helping them be vulnerable and authentic and get into integrity. He's like, dude, I'm such a jackass. He's like, I can't believe I reacted the way I did. I'm just so grateful that you didn't escalate it. And I said, dude, and he starts telling me his story. He said, he said, I was in and out of drugs and rehab. I was 50 pounds overweight. And keep in mind, he looked like the model of a healthy 50-year-old man at this point. And he's telling me this whole story and how they had this transformation. And I said, hey, you know what we're having a couple speakers fly down to talk to us here in a couple of minutes. Why don't you come over and just share your story with my group? He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah, I'm dead serious. So I had his daughter come with him, who's 14 years old. He ends up teaching our group about his whole story. And I told his daughter, I said, I just want to tell you how grateful you should be to have a dad that's willing to own his mistakes and see, like, to correct himself, because my dad was the same way. That's why I was trained in Navy SEAL style, how to handle a man like that. But afterwards, he was so grateful. We became really good friends. We're actually doing a podcast this week on my podcast. And he's one of the biggest home builders in Utah. It's this whole thing, but it became this beautiful story that people got to see. And then the next day I said, hey, since you do yoga, do you want to lead us in yoga tomorrow? He's like, sure. So we end up a day later on the beach, 50 guys doing yoga with this guy and just having this incredible experience. But all of this happened because I did the work to not let that be about me. Like any other part of my life, I 100%, I have a silver tongue. I would have destroyed this man. And I would have done it for my ego. I would have done it just to be a dick. I would have done it just because I could. And instead, I just loved him enough to know that this dude's going through it. And because I honored him in that moment, we have this beautiful friendship that's formed now that is really just really cool.
That's awesome, dude. Talk to me. I mean, that's an amazing thing, because here you are in front of 50 men. You're teaching, how to really operate in your masculine and not be toxic. And you have an opportunity right there where literally you could have blown it or really taken it to the next level. And it's one thing teaching it. There's another thing living that out. Talk to me some about your business. What have been some experiences you've had? Because I love the whole, and one of the things I've learned is respond versus react. And you mentioned that react just a minute ago is responding, like really taking a step back and processing through, okay, what is actually, I love what you said, slowing down, getting the right part of your brain, taking some breath work. I'm safe. Everything's okay. Now let me make some rational decisions. Talk to me. I mean, you built a hugely successful business and mentoring and coaching a lot of men. Talk to me about some of the experiences you've had in your business, having to use those same tools.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I for those that aren't familiar with my story, I mean, for 17 years, I was a real estate agent and became one of the top agents in the country. And, I had really good mentors, Ken, like the best in the business: Mike Ferry, Tom Ferry, Bill Pipes, Bob Fitzgerald, some of these dudes that are just legends as far as trainers and coaches go. And, my first full year in real estate without an assistant, I sold 60 houses. And I just did that through pure grit and hustle and grinding. And, because I did that, it kind of opened the door for me to be around all these other people because they wanted to have me on their stages. I was 24 years old, 23 years old. And so I got to really be around some amazing individuals. They taught me all these things. But, a couple of things that I learned was, number one is, too often real estate agents, especially, I know you have that background as well, but they focus on the result. They focus on the outcome of what's happening, and it gets really emotional at that point. I mean, so many real estate deals fall out of contract, so many things. I mean, you have to sell every house 3 times, to keep that thing alive. And if you're focused on like getting the deal done and that being the win or the celebration, then when something goes wrong, it gets super stressful. And, you end up out of the business, or you end up just being, you start getting commission breath. And so my mentor always said, you've got to focus on the controllables. You control the controllables. What do you get to do? We celebrate you making your calls for 3 hours. That's the win. It's not closing the deal. Celebrate going on the appointments. Celebrate doing the lead follow-up every single day, because when you make your contacts, you're going to have people to follow up with. When you follow up, you're going to have appointments to go on. When you go on the appointments, you'll have deals and you're going to have money coming in. And so I remember one time I was out in Fenway Park, actually. It was during the playoffs. I'm a Cleveland Indians fan. They were playing the Red Sox. This is 2016. And I was getting lunch before the game, like in the stadium. And my loan officer called me. This loan officer, I'd given him, he did about 1 out of every 10 deals for me. And he's like, dude, I screwed up. He did this thing wrong. And my client that was going to close that day, it was about a $45,000 commission for me. It was a big, expensive home. So I was really looking forward to this one. He screwed it up, and the dude, he was going to postpone for like a week to close. But the dude in that week, once the deal didn't go through, he thought it was a sign from God. So he said, we're going to move to Jersey instead. And so not only did we not get the deal closed, I didn't get another deal from him either. And I lost that deal. But I remember just honest to God, it didn't affect my happiness level even one iota. And then, contrast that with, I sold a $32 million house, which was the most expensive home ever in Utah, about a year after that. And both those days, my emotions were on the same level because I never attached who I was as a realtor to the outcome that I was getting. Because the second you do, you start to get complacent, you start to get arrogant, you start to forget what you're doing, you start to treat people like a number as opposed to, people. And so that's just, I got really good at just focusing on the things that I do. My grandma turned 100 last year, and her one piece of advice was like, pay attention to things you can control and don't worry about the rest. And it's really true. It's like, that's her one piece of advice to me, but like, I just don't get caught up in things I don't control. I take care of me every day, and one way or another, my life works. And so I think just having that much, and you only learn that from real life experience. Like, you don't know how you're going to react to that till it happens. But when those things happen and you're just like, okay, I guess it's part of the deal. Obviously, you learn the lesson, make sure it doesn't repeat itself, move forward. Sometimes you can't work with that loan officer anymore. But in that moment, it was like, all right, well, I'm going to go watch the game and enjoy it. And I guess we lost the deal,
Yeah. Yeah. How did you learn that? Because that's not just something you go, you know what? I'm not going to tie my emotions to an outcome. That had to be a discipline that you built and grew over a period of time. Like, walk us through how you got to that point.
Well, an advantage that I had at a young age was I got cut from the baseball team, for example, when I was 14 years old. And it was like my life at the time. And then when I was 19, 20, 21, 22, from 19 to 21, I served a mission for my church, and I got rejected all day. I mean, it was just part of the deal. But then 21, 22, 23, 24, those years, I set up 4 or 5 businesses. And it was interesting, Ken, because they kind of worked, but I didn't make any money. So like, I had a business that sold steak and chicken door to door, and we were crushing it. But my business partner kind of stole all my money. So I ended up losing money on the adventure. I also had a Christmas light business. We made a little bit of money. I had a TV show that we were the most watched show on Sundays in Utah, but I lost money both years I did it because I was just running so much money to try. I didn't know business, right? But I had all these things that to me were failures. They failed. They were absolute failure. I didn't make any money on them. But to the outside world, I got this little gift where everybody was seeing what I was doing. And they're like, man, Jimmy's just not afraid to go for it. Jimmy's really going for it. So they were complimenting me on just the effort of doing it, which you don't usually get. Usually people reward you if stuff's going great. But to them, it was like so honorable that I was just trying to do these things at a young age. And I look back at, the TV show, I was the host of it too. So I've watched old episodes. I'm like, oh my gosh, I was a child. Like, I had no business doing that. Like, somebody should have tackled me. But there was so much honor in that. And I think I really learned by doing those things and seeing how people reacted, even though they were failures, quote unquote, like they lost money. I was getting a lot of benefit of just seeing that people were honoring it. They could tell, like, wow, this dude's really going for it. And so it just empowered me going forward in my life to just not worry about the outcome, not worry about the result, to like truly enjoy doing it. And I saw, with my TV show, I lost a bunch of money on it, but I got to know every major business in town, all the entertainment places, all the big players, all the restaurants. And so everywhere for the next 5 years, my life had these huge benefits, ancillary benefits of, connecting and networking and meeting all these top people. I was in rooms by age 26, 27. I had no business being in these rooms. And I was always welcomed in because I just knew all these people. And it really opened these doors, that blew the doors open on my life of who I could be around.
So talk to me about your desire then to, when did it shift from you from real estate and making money and building a business and being an entrepreneur to, man, I want to take what I've learned and the skills that I have, and I want to help reproduce this in young men.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, I sold the most expensive home ever in Utah. Like I said, it was $32.5 million, made a 7-figure commission in 20 minutes. I mean, it was really the easiest deal I've ever done. And I just had this huge epiphany, like, you're done with this. I need to do something more impactful. I was the number one realtor in Utah that year. And, I think my last full year I was a realtor, we sold 497 homes. So this was like, we were crushing it. I mean, money was flowing in. I was traveling the world, doing all these amazing things, but I just felt like you need to do something that has more impact. And so I started playing with that a lot. I started, doing thinking time and meditating and praying and trying to figure out what I was going to do next. And the same things kept popping up for me. The 2 things that people kept asking me was, number one was, Jimmy, how do I meet a group of friends like you have? I really do have amazing friends. Like I have some of the best friends in the world. And then the second thing was, I feel like I'm stuck in life. You look like you're really, living your life. Like, how do I get out of this place? And so it hit me. I said, that's the thing that I do better than anyone in the world is like, I know how to help men connect on a deeper level. That is my gift. Like all my best friends met through me. I just have a unique ability to connect people and network them. And so that they have deep, true relationships and friendships. And so I said, that's what I'm going to do. And so I still kind of had a little bit of that imposter syndrome, like, well, who am I to teach this or whatever else, and, but I just leaned into it and I said, if I can help men, if like shortly after that, the pandemic and all that hit, and I have this saying, that God brings us together and the devil divides us. And I said, if nothing else, if I can connect people and I can help them feel loved, I lost 2 friends to suicide within the first 2 months of the pandemic. And I was just like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to get people together. I'm going to be the guy. I'm going to be the biggest damn super spreader you've ever seen, because I just reject the idea that we need to be isolated. I just completely, on July 1st, 2020, I threw my big firework event. I throw it every year for my clients and friends. I had 10,000 people there, Ken. July 1st, 2020. I might have been the biggest fireworks show in the country that year. I dropped way too much money on it. It's just my thing, right? Yeah. And there was grown men crying, and because people felt normal for that first time. Together. And so that was always my gift. I'm a community builder, right? And so I was like, well, if nothing else, what is the value of a best friend? And I've been to so many masterminds. I'm in, Irwin's with you, and I'm in the Avengers Mastermind, the 100 million. I'm in Tony Robbins Platinum membership. Like I've spent in the last year, I've spent $500,000 on masterminds, events, conferences, seminars, coaching. Like it's just my world, right? I want to know it all. I want to be a part of them all. So I've seen a lot of stuff that worked. I saw a lot of stuff that didn't work. And so I just said, if I just take the best stuff that I've learned and put it all into this thing and help teach men how to connect, what's the value of one best friend? What's the value of 10 best friends? In my group, there's 50 guys in each group. I have 400 guys now that I coach, but I keep them in pods of 50. And they truly have become best friends, like all of them, and that to me is the gift. The ultimate gift you can give somebody is the gift of another best friend. And so it's my job to protect that container. It's my job to make sure that only people with the right intentions are around. It's my job to make sure that we stand in integrity. And through doing that, and then I just throw these crazy adventures in there. I bring a lot of speakers and friends in. I've had people like Irwin and all of the different people that speak at the big conferences come in and speak to my guys, and they love what we're doing. They can see the goodness in it. So they're happy to help me and do it. And so that's been a real game changer for everything that I've been doing. But that was really the reason I started it. And, I launched that first group. I was trying to get 50 guys. And within 8 hours, I had 147 men apply to be in the group. And it's not cheap. Wow. It's $18,000 a year per person. And so I knew I was onto something, because in that moment, I said, oh my gosh, men are dying for connection. They're dying to be able to have a place where they can, it's okay not to completely be okay, where you can be a little bit more vulnerable and you can open up and, express yourself better. And so that's where We Are the They was founded out of. And that's what I've been putting my full focus on the last.
So tell me, what are some of the things you've learned personally for you out of that whole experience? Because you're pouring into guys, but what's God showing you?
Yeah. Something I've just learned just recently is, I think there's this false idea that eventually it gets easier, right? Like once I get to this level, or once I get to this thing, and life just has seasons to it, right? And when you're having a hard time, you're going through adversity, we talked about a couple of things before the call with you. It's just a season that you're in. And I think understanding that really makes relationships a lot easier to do. It makes just life in general. So that I've learned now, everybody is going through something at all times. And so all you can do is show up, and no matter who you show up for is going to make an impact, because everybody's going through something. And, I've learned that true change, you've got to have a support group. You've got to have accountability. One of the things that I love that I learned through my guys, a lot of these guys had never really opened up about what was going on with them, really. Maybe past sins they needed to cover, they'd been covering up, they needed to, kind of get out with their spouse or whoever it might be. And we don't trust the love we're getting when we're holding on to things like that, because we're shaming ourselves. And we say to ourselves, if they knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. Right. And by being vulnerable, by opening up and talking about this and getting into integrity, you can trust the love that comes in. And so you kind of find your people that way, right? I mean, they always stick around, but if they don't, they weren't yours anyway. And so that's probably one of the most valuable things I've learned doing this, is just that, like, vulnerability really is a superpower, because it's when we're most lovable. It's when we attract people to us for the right reasons, right? It's when we end up finding our tribe. And so that, I think, above everything else, has been my favorite thing to learn.
Yeah, the authenticity. I heard Gary Brecka, who's a good friend of mine. He's at every event that I do. I did an event in Vegas in October of 2021, and Gary spoke there with us, and he talked about the frequency of authenticity, and how the frequency of authenticity is the highest frequency we emit as human beings, and it's emitted when we have a belief in a subject and a great deep passion for a subject. And it's also the highest frequency that's sought after from other human beings. And so when you get around people and you really do live an authentic life, and it's basically, you're vulnerable. Like, your story that you tell is not a story of perfection, and I think the one things I love about you, dude, is in the Instagram world we live in, it's like, it's so refreshing. And you're like that's a breath of fresh air, dude. Talk about that. How you've been able to take that in you, that authenticity, and really that transparency in the world that we live in now, of, the Instagram influencer, and really use that to be able to make a difference.
Yeah. Back about 10 years ago, I was coaching with my coach, Melissa. And at the time I was dating this girl, and she went to Thailand to go do like a month's worth of like just community service or whatever, like help kids at an orphanage or something. And every morning we would FaceTime at it was like 5 a.m. where I live. And one of the days I woke up, she was like, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, I don't really love you. I just like talking to you and like having somebody while I'm out here." And it was like, kind of broke my heart, and just kind of devastated me. She's like, I don't see you as like a long-term option though. I was like, oh, and I was pretty devastated. I really liked her. I thought she was going to be the one. And I went out, and I ended up randomly hooking up with a couple of girls, which was, obviously not the best choice of things I could have done. But I remember I called my coach, and I was so used to living in a world with my religious background where you really got punished a lot. Like, if you did something bad, like, you couldn't take the sacrament for months or a year. You had to, you couldn't go into the temple. You couldn't do certain things. So I was used to like, oh boy, here comes that conversation about to get my ass handed to me, and I didn't even want to tell her what had happened, because I was embarrassed about it. And I told her, this is what this girl said, and this is what I did. And fully expecting her to just kind of jump me, just get really upset at me. And she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I wish I could give you a hug. I wish I was there." And I was like, wait, that's not how this conversation is supposed to go. And she's like, "No," she's like, "Obviously not the best decision making you could have done, but like, I can only imagine you had a broken heart." And, and it was like, she made sure I wasn't like, these were just random women I met out at a bar or whatever else. It was like, and in that moment I realized, it was like the first time I think I really understood that, like, wow, like, I'm not a bad person. I might have done a bad thing, but I'm a good person. I know my heart. And she saw that. And so by being vulnerable, I felt that. And she's the one that told me, she said, "Jimmy, you're most lovable when you're vulnerable, authentic, and in integrity. And so try to do it." So shortly after that, I had an opportunity. I was up at this cabin in Bar Lake, Utah. There was about 10 of us there. And I was there to kind of help upsell the package to the lady that was hosting this event. And we all got super vulnerable. Everybody was telling their story. And I remember this beautiful woman there, and kind of was crushing on her a little bit. And she told her story, and it was crazy. It was like this crazy story. She's bawling, and I'm bawling. We're all bawling. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And I'm connecting on a level that I'm just not familiar with. And I remember, like, my whole 20s, Ken, everybody thought I was just like, had everything put together because I had so much going. And I was the number one agent in the county, if not the state. I really, for a 20-year-old, I was doing a lot of things right, but I did have this underwhelming like shame about who I was, or like what I wasn't doing. And I never really talked about it with anybody. I hadn't talked about it with anybody. I remember being there, was that they were all kind of strangers to me. So I was like, you know what? I don't know these people anyway. Maybe I'm going to share it. Maybe I should share it. And so I opened up and really shared like my insecurities and my fears. I'd never done that. And I was bawling, and they were all bawling. And Next thing I know, I am like feeling connected to these random strangers as much as anybody I've ever met in my life. And that was the first day I realized that vulnerability was a superpower. So you said, how did you develop this? Well, it's like, I just kind of dared enough, until we have competency, we have to have courage. We have to just believe that this thing's going to work. And then once you do it, you're like, wow, that was really nice. I want to do that more often. So then you keep doing it. Then all of a sudden you have confidence in it. So then it's like, oh, this really is a superpower. And like, I still don't tell like the wrong things to the wrong people. But, if you do follow me on Instagram, it's the favorite thing that I get told when I am speaking is people say, this guy's real. Like this dude's he's just being real. And I learned that because I got rewarded for doing it when it took all of my courage to do it that first time when I didn't want to.
What would you say to somebody who's listening to this right now and they're like, man, it's hard for me to be authentic?
Yeah, it is if you're not in a safe container. So you've got to get around people that you can trust. Like that's why my men's group works. So it's why what you do is so powerful, Ken. It's like, if I can create a situation where you feel safe, you're dying to share it. And so you got to start asking yourself better questions. Like, who am I around? Do I truly feel safe with them? If they had, if they knew things about me that weren't pretty, would they ever use them against me? And if you even have to question that, you probably shouldn't share it, right? Like you got to be around people that have you, that have your back, that are going to have your best interest in mind. And when you are, you'll want to do it. And so I think more than anything, it's starting to search to be around better people, to be around better environments, places where you feel safe, things like that.
Yeah. What would you say to somebody that says, okay, man, I've been looking, it's hard for me to find those kind of relationships?
Well, I mean, I'm selfishly give a plug for my group. It's the number one place I've ever met that does it. Check us out. We are the they. I mean, honest to God, like that's why we've grown so fast. But you kind of start asking questions like you start looking at like what does make a good friend, like what truly. I have a book coming out in February called Be One, and it comes from the Marcus Aurelius quote: waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one. And there's a whole chapter in there where I talk about finding good friends and what that looks like. But you truly want to be around people that just make your life better. They've got you. They know they care about you. And you do that. There's an old saying, whatever you want more of, give it away. So if you want better friends, just be a great friend. Like start being an amazing friend to people, right? If you're a good friend to enough people, you're going to attract other good people. You're going to find your good friends. You'll have some that you're like, oh, turns out that person wasn't such a good friend, but you'll find your real friends and you'll be able to, next thing you know, you're like, I can't believe the quality and caliber of people I get to be surrounded by. But you get that by giving that away. Be the thing you want to receive and it'll find you in your life.
Dude, I love it, man. The people ask me all the time, how in the world do you get around the people you get around? How do you have the people that you have speak at your events, in your mastermind, on your text thread? And I just tell them, great leaders want something for people, not from people.
Beautiful.
It's really not about me, man. I really am an individual, and you are too. That's why we connected so easily and so quickly. You really do want something for people, and which leans into my favorite Zig Ziglar quote: if I help enough people get what they want, eventually I'm going to get what I want.
Yeah.
And the bank account, no matter how many commas or zeros, cannot equal the level of fulfillment you get at night when you lay your head down on a pillow and it's just you and God.
Yeah. Yeah. It's most people, I teach that principle. I teach networking as much as anything when I speak and stuff, and people can't help themselves. Like I tell them that principle, like you have to truly give, not expecting anything in return. But if you don't truly expect nothing in return, all pain in life comes from unmet expectations. So you're just going to be disappointed. But B, it's energetic and people can feel that on you, and people be like, oh, I got something for you. If you need windows, I have a window place. I'm like, that's not for me. That's for you. Like give expecting nothing in return and the doors will just plow open for you. I got friends that you only have to have 3 or 4 really connected friends to meet everybody that you want to in this world. Ken, you know this. And I've asked a few of them because I have one friend in particular. He's connected me to so many amazing humans. He recently connected me to somebody that connected me to Jerry West for my podcast and Johnny Manziel and some of these amazing people that I've been able to have on. And I asked him one time, I said, man, you're always helping me. You're always going out of your way to like make sure that I, am just getting connected and stuff. I said, thank you for doing that. He said, Jimmy, you're one of the few humans I've ever met that just truly shows up for himself in every single way. You do what you say you're going to do. You've always made me look good. You're always pouring back into me. He has 2 business partners that have changed his life now. He met them both through me. well after he'd already poured into me multiple times. And so like, he just was one of those guys that gets that principle. But if I would have had an expectation, or if he would have had an expectation, he might have blown the relationship with me well before I could have introduced him to these friends when they came into my life at the right time to introduce to him.
Yeah, and I love that, dude. Jimmy, what's the best place for people to connect with you, my friend?
Yeah, my Instagram is the best. It's Mr. Jimmy Rex. And every time I'm doing stuff, I post it on there. That's where you can sign up if you're interested in my program or just want to learn more about it. And I'm just trying to make content to make people's lives better, man. Just always trying to pour into them. And so if there's any way I can ever serve you, if you're listening to this, send me a message, and I do answer all my own DMs and happy to help any way I can.
I love it, dude. Man, I love your heart, dude. And I'm glad we got connected, man. I love what you're doing. You remind me of a younger version of myself with better looking hair.
They can do some amazing things nowadays. So
I know, right?
You can. And no, man, that's why I say, like, I feel so blessed to be around these people. I have no business being in the room, but you earn that through creating value. And that's, so I honor all you guys and people like yourself that have helped, guys like me be able to get these situations. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, guys, thank you for joining us on another episode of As the Leader Grows, and my good friend, Jimmy Rex. Guys, go follow him, Mr. Jimmy Rex, on Instagram. Check him out. Everything he does, guys, is amazing. Again, in this influencer world we live in, man, people are starving for authenticity, and that's what you get from my friend right here. And as always, if this episode has added value, I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, snap a screenshot of this podcast, share it over on Instagram, tag me, tag Jimmy. We'd love to be able to give you some love in front of our audience. And again,